Welcome, Spartans, to the August Podcast Evolved Book Club, your favorite book club podcast. That's crazy. I love it. Part of the Rated M Gaming Network. I am your host, David, and with me today is Aaron.
Hello.
Krysta.
Hello.
And returning community guest, Chris.
Woo, woo, woo.
That's Chris, everybody. That's what he does.
That's not how you say hello.
That's how you say hello in Scotland, Krista. Everyone knows this.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's
Racist.
okay. So this month's podcast is all about Saint's Testimony, which is a fantastic short book that was written by Frank O'Connor. Everyone should probably know his name. He works at 343i. He started off as the community manager. He's now the franchise development director for all of Halo, which is awesome.
Yeah.
His previous works... Oh, yeah. His previous works include Midnight and the Heart of Mythologian, which does...
That was a good one.
That was one of the short stories in Halo Evolution.
That was really good.
It is, yes.
Right?
Yes.
Also,
It has an animated short as well, doesn't it?
It is,
It's
yeah.
Yeah, it does.
I'm not sure when it pops up. Is it in Legends?
no, it's
Or
No,
somewhere
No,
else?
it's
It's
not
just
in
its
Halo
own thing?
Legends. It's on
It was-
Waypoint.
Yeah, it was one of
Yeah.
the things that appeared in Waypoint when they did a few.
But it's like a motion comic thing. It's
Yeah.
like, that was awesome. I remember that. That's like,
Yeah, like the
Go,
Mona
Krista.
Lisa.
yeah,
Yes. And
Headhunters as well, I think, had one as well.
So- definitely a good
So-
story.
Definitely a good story.
But
The
not the one
publisher
we're
is
talking about.
Simon and Schuster. No, not today. We'll get around to that eventually if we haven't already. I think we did some evolution stuff before. We have so many things to cover. It's awesome. We're only getting more and more and more. We'll never run out. It should be great. Hopefully we get another 5 next year. That'd be so sweet.
It would be nice.
Very nice. So this is an ebook only, and it will probably stay that way because it's so small. It's
Sadly.
only about...
Size
Sadly?
doesn't matter, David.
Really? Sadly? Thanks, Krista. That's what I needed to
I
hear.
suppose could they release it as a graphic novel? Is it long enough to do that someday?
I don't know visually if it would be interesting enough for it.
I don't
Now, there's
know.
a fantastic
There's
scene
a
in it.
certain part in the book that would be good to have a
Yeah.
visual representation
But-
of.
The whole story takes place in one room, essentially. So, and there's only a handful of characters. So,
A lot of
don't know
escalation takes place in one room. One issue will cover one room and their transition to another room.
Oh,
They're
wow.
like, we're going to walk down this hall to the other room. It's
Oh.
going to take 30 pages.
I'm being a bit cruel.
that's a bit cruel. You love escalation.
I do.
You're like
it's
Escalation's
quite
biggest
good.
fan.
It's really cool in some points.
Well, it's okay. Yeah, I'm not mad about it as well. There's certain issues I have no interest in. That's just kind of the storyline thing, though. Some characters interest me more than others.
Like I think I said before, if it wasn't a Halo comic, I might have dropped off before now.
Yeah, I could see people doing that. Hold on, we're getting tied up. Sorry,
Yes,
back
yes,
on
yes.
track.
Back
on
in.
track. The release date was the 27th of July this year. As I said, it was ebook only because of the length of it. It is super cheap, maybe $1, €1 thereabouts.
It's 99
£1
cents.
ish.
Yeah,
which
it's like
was
a
a few
pound
Aaron.
something.
Yeah, it was so worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll lead you through the general synopsis, and then we will discuss our own opinions and thoughts on the book. So the book takes place on the 17th of January in 2558, which is more or less the current year timeline that we're working through. I think escalation is further along. This book happens after something. Iona has been seen as like the main character in this book. So we've seen her before in Halo Bloodlines, which was a comic where she worked with Spartan Team Black, which are a bunch of Spartan 2s. I can't remember. I think they crash landed on a planet. They were like, were they going to see
They crashed on a Forerunner testing and analysis station for
that's it.
A
Yeah,
line
like
installation. It was pretty much a...
line installation.
like a junkyard kind of thing, as my brain kind of has it. Like it was like what was he was doing experiments? It was like a monitor gone crazy.
They
doing
were
experiments.
testing for they were
Flood
testing
immunity
for
and
flood
stuff?
immunity in species. Wasn't that the goal of
Yeah.
the facility?
That was it. Yeah, and interesting enough, I
That's
think
why he liked the hunters so much.
hunters were immune, but he says they weren't suitable
of
for what
them.
he wanted them for. Yeah, there wasn't enough of them. Sorry, off topic again. So the synopsis. A military-grade artificial intelligence known as Iona has only 1 week to live. After that, the UNSC will legally terminate her 7-year existence in order to stave off the threat of data corruption phenomenon known as rampancy, a condition which will eventually take hold of her functionality and persona, endangering all those around her. In a last-ditch effort to save herself, Iona has successfully launched an unprecedented legal appeal against her own death sentence, a case being watched very closely, not only at the highest levels of human government, but by others with very different agenda. So, that's a very high-level synopsis of essentially what happens through the book. So we'll kind of go through it a little bit there as we each talk about. We have our own favourite parts, which I'm sure probably overlap because the book isn't massive. But some of the kind of things which are important to know is that this, you've probably heard this thing before, and coming if you're familiar with Halo canon, that all AIs, smart AIs, only have a 7-year lifespan where they essentially think themselves to death due to the process that like they have data that overlaps on data that overlaps on data, and eventually there's data corruption in copying files over and stuff like that. And they do this at such an extreme rate in their later end of their lives that they go insane. And you've seen kind of the results of this in Halo 4. We see Cortana gaining rampancy. But I think a lot of like Cortana's is very different. She's a very unique AI. We won't go into too much detail there, but Iona is like a standard AI where her matrix came from a cloned, recently deceased human, which is generally how smart AIs are made. So the kind of endangering of the realms that the smart AIs, especially military grade AIs, are like super intelligent and super evasive in terms of that, like they can cause a lot of damage to an obviously heavily computerized and networked human system, as you can imagine it would be in the 25th, 26th century.
Mhm.
So the kind of story, I'm just going to talk my own kind of feelings and now that kind of ask everybody. So I thought this was incredibly interesting. Iona wasn't really like a character that stood out to me in the previous works. It was kind of like, oh, another smart AI, very interesting. The story Bloodlines wasn't one of my favorites, so I kind of thought nothing else of it. But when Frank O'Connor said this is what he was doing, that like when I got the kind of general synopsis, which was the court case, like it's super fucking interesting because one of the big kind of tropes and things in this Halo universe is that AIs have 7-year lifespans, and they're everywhere, and they're super important to the human war effort. Like big time, they do all the slip space calculations that allow like humans to travel obviously through slip space, which is vital for the human kind of empire or UNSC, all kind of human civilization, I suppose, outside of like a solar system. So they need these guys. They need them for all these vital functions. But it's just, you see the humanity coming through them in so many different kind of variants. Like Cortana would be like one of the probably the most human characters in Halo, and she's totally perfectly contrasted by the robotic John. Do you know what I mean? Lack of human emotions, and they're kind of that beautiful kind of dichotomy between the two. So it's great to see other characters come in. So we'll talk through kind of the stuff of what we've seen. So she kind of kicks off with she's trying to solve a mathematical problem, and she's comparing human thinking to Forerunner thinking and how we're similar but we're different, and the way we did it.
Yeah, we
and the way that
limit
they
ourselves by our concept of time in a way
Yeah.
that the Forerunners never did.
And they kind of ignore time as like which is kind of weird. Like it's kind of really kind of
Well,
high level stuff.
It's not that they
Well,
ignore
the thing
it. They
about
have
the thing about time is that time is a made-up concept by humanity.
Mm-hmm.
and humans just have a different or Forerunners
So
have a
the
different
time that we
understanding of it.
perceive, and the time that's always, because we perceive time as a linear thing when it really isn't. But that's just how we keep track of stuff. So I suppose the Forerunners saw time as it actually is, which kind of just doesn't exist.
Ooh,
Ooh,
Krista cut
pretty-
off.
it's some high level stuff.
Yeah,
Did she cut off in the middle of the talk? That's hilarious.
we'll get her back. But while we're
think
going, the other thing, we'll just keep going and pretend that didn't happen and get her back.
Yeah, we'll
Um,
cut her back in. It'll be fine.
The other
edit her
thing
back
I
in.
like about the way they talk about this is that Krista getting cut off messed me up mid-thought. Damn it.
So they were talking how she kicks off where she's trying to solve a problem. The difference, she's talking about the difference between the thought processes in terms of how Forerunners problem solved, how humans problem solved, and that a lot of her kind of when she's trying to solve a problem, it's not just to solve the problem for herself, but to do so in terms that humans would
I was
understand.
about to mention. It was awesome the way she specifically says, she as an AI can think outside the box in a way humans just aren't capable of, and then she can translate it back for them.
That's one of her, I say, most vital functions in terms of kind of essentially backwards compatibility.
Yeah, she
of
can
trying
boil
to
it
kind
down
of
and make it simple for the thick monkeys.
exactly for the thick monkeys. But thanks, Krista.
We were going to play that off, but you dropped out mid-sentence. It was kind of awkward.
Yeah, no. Well, actually, the sentence will be in my recording.
That's very true. So we'll all ignore.
So
that
if I do drop off, then the sentence will still be there.
Cool. We'll be silent for a little bit and just pretend like you're talking, and then we'll just continue on and say.
So much editing, David. So much editing.
No.
Oh, I'm leaving all this in. Fuck that, Krista.
Yeah, people enjoy the banter.
They
Woo!
Oh,
So-
so let's see.
Moving
I have
on.
shoddy internet,
It's
guys.
from the first page of the book, which we've kind of covered so
Yeah.
far.
This it kicks off in the
or-
courtroom. Which
She's in a courtroom and she's been assigned an advocate, which is kind of interesting in terms of this her one kind of legal resource, because she's kind of representing herself, because she obviously has access to all of human knowledge more or less.
But I think they mentioned that because AIs are classed as equipment, technically she has no right to an advocate.
Yeah,
but they just
she's
throw
in
her a
this
bone.
kind of grey area of they're all trying to figure out what the right way to kind of treat AIs are, because they are
Because,
obviously an
one of-
intelligence, a
So they've-
personality.
And so they've all just blocked out a bunch of information from her also, like everyone in the room, she can't find out who they are and all that.
Which is like
Which is a
thought
major
that was
problem.
weird. It's a major problem because we know why. Because essentially,
Yeah, but-
spoilers.
Well, she does say in the start of it, it was one of the terms she negotiated for the court case was that she couldn't know the identities of anyone in the room. That was. They mentioned that in one of the early pages. It's not the actual
Do they?
reason, we find out later, but it is.
Yeah.
It's the reason. It's how they get her to agree to it in the first place. Was you can have your court case, but you can't know anything about the people in the room. Because
Yeah,
the other
there have
thing
to be
they
certain
mention about it is
restrictions on it.
Normally, you'd have a trial by a jury of your peers, but her
But she
peers
doesn't
are
have any.
her other AI, which are other equipment, which can't
Yeah.
stand as peers.
And that's kind of but do you know what I mean? I'm gonna just say, right, she has this advocate who's a person who's kind of trying to act as like a kind of filter for prompting her questions and responses and breaking them down for everyone else to understand. But her advocate is Roland, who is another AI.
We're going to go into the spoilers.
He's on the Infinity.
No, we're going straight into spoilers
Well,
because this is like I read this yesterday and I was like, does she not know that? Because
no, it's all a clever disguise
Yeah,
ploy as far as
because she's talking about like reading his heart rate and pulse rate and kind of
Mhm.
he's
Yeah.
nervous and
But
I'm like, but
they've
fuck,
tricked her
that's
into it
Roland.
because she can't read his identity. She would probably be able to work out that his identity was fake and he wasn't a real human.
Which is kind of interesting. So how is he being displayed? He's obviously not a hologram that's the same size as all other holograms that
I
we've seen.
assume when they
Single
disconnected her
colour.
for maintenance, they switched her back on inside the equivalent of a virtual world, Because she says that just
Yeah.
before the court case, they shut her down for maintenance, and then she came back up, and she had these
Well,
restrictions on her.
didn't they shut her down? Yeah, they shut her down to put the restrictions on, so it wouldn't be hard for them to program
Yeah.
something in to make
And
her
she-
perceive things differently.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she doesn't suspect anything because, as far as she's concerned, it's a
in the
condition of the
real-
court case that she can't know who anyone is.
Yeah, except for one guy.
Well,
Who
we
is-
get to that
yeah.
because I'm
So-
curious about that detail.
Essentially, what we're getting at is that this whole court case is a farce. It's not real. It's everyone in it is obviously there to learn and to understand, but it's not.
Well, it kind of is. It's
It's setting precedent, and like they said that at the end of it, that like everything is evidence and everything that she said and spoke will all be taken into consideration. But it's not a real trial. It's not public. It's not kind of it's very under the radar, under the books.
Yeah, well,
Only
this
high-level
seems to be
guys.
essentially. I think this is the setup of the book. Is it's hinting at the future of the status of AIs, but they're obviously humanity aren't at a stage where they're willing to have this court case in person
because
yet.
I
It
imagine-
seems to be still within the military. They've
Yeah.
They've
Well, I
duped-
imagine there's huge repercussions if you say if you're granted human status.
Yeah,
Um,
suddenly Roland decides he doesn't want to work on the Infinity anymore. He wants to go travel.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
wants to go find himself. Do you
Well,
know what I
that's
mean?
also
What the hell
one
happens
of
there?
the main reasons that AI are displayed as humans and have emotional algorithms in them, because without that, it would scare people.
Yeah, that's
Well, I
what they
think
say. The
kind
whole
of-
human thing
they
is
kind of
for
hint at it in the
interactions.
book that it's part of their makeup because they're
Yeah,
scanned
this-
from a
Human
human
brains.
brain. Whilst they
But-
can switch it off, it is kind of a part of their makeup.
Yeah, but which is kind of interesting that another character in this book, BB, is one of the only kind of AIs with no kind of anthropomorphic representation. He displays himself as a box.
A black
and
box.
he doesn't a black
Hence
box.
the name.
Yes, and if
BB.
you're not familiar
So,
with him, he's the
he's
AI from
from-
the Kilo 5 trilogy.
Yeah,
the
he's
Karen
essentially
Travis books.
a super high level only
He's an Oni, yeah.
He's basically
smart AI.
an AI. He's basically an AI that doesn't have the restrictions of any humanity on it, because he doesn't have many emotions either. So he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to display his. He doesn't have to display his avatar and make it look and sound human, and he also
No.
doesn't have to worry about expressing any kind of emotion.
He
Which
does
probably-
have those
Does,
emotions,
yes, he
but he
does have
chooses
them.
to display what he has. Like he kind of, it's just his personality more so than anything else. It's not like that he has anything less than any others. It's just this is what his personality is, where he feels no need to justify.
I kind of picture him as the AI equivalent of, like a human, like if you ever watch House.
Oh,
House.
He's kind of
Gregory
a
House?
smart, know-it-all jerk, but
That's
know.
a great way to think about it.
it's the feeling I got from him when I read those books.
But like he had a great. I mean, we're getting a bit off topic, but he had the great moment where he was splintered off, and he was with oh God, what's the human's name? He's like the linguist.
Phillips?
He's like
Phillips, yes, Phyllis.
Phillips.
I was gonna call
Yeah,
him.
Phyllis. Yeah, Phyllis. He has like that when he gets splintered off, and he has like he kind of develops another kind of subset
He
personality where
suffers
like
damage. I think that's
Yeah,
what it is. His chip is damaged, and when he reintegrates it, he has this fear and kind of sort of
no, but even before he reintegrates himself, the fragment of BB that was left behind kind of grew and became well more attached to Phillips than previously. Like he's a whole different relationship with Phillips that he built up,
yeah.
and that's what kind of was the fear that he would lose that when the chip was obviously integrated back in. When like he would like gain all the kind of missing information. It was kind of that whole actually subplot was really, really interesting in terms of like the AI being afraid of what it was missing. Like a part of itself was
Yeah.
gone. It doesn't have like a human kind of. He was trying to explain it, but couldn't because he couldn't. Doesn't have. There's no human equivalent of like losing a part of your consciousness and a part of who you are, and it going off
Well, there
learning
kind
stuff.
of is, like amnesia or something like that.
Oh, that'd be
But I mean-
terrifying.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, so that's it. They seem to be the two AI that are performing this whole kind of trick on Iona.
Yeah, I never actually
I don't
considered
think it
that.
was like don't think it was like a trick to be
No, yeah, it's
mean or to
No,
you
but
know,
she was lied
negatively
to.
affect her.
So that's what they said. It was kind of like a really great way of allowing them to get inside her and slowly shut her and partition her off as they kind of reduce her
And
her
I kind of think
functionality.
the other thing is when they sort of mention it, I assume they were for shutting her down anyway, so they've given
Yeah.
her this chance and this kind of fake trial as an opportunity to plead her case,
And a general experiment to see what would happen.
Yeah,
you know what I
and
mean?
they'll
To
But
see how
the
this-
other interesting thing is it's being run by AIs. So could
Well,
you
we're
think
assuming.
that these AIs have self-preservation as well?
Well, we're assuming it's being run by them. I mean, we just know that Roland has a part as the advocate. We don't know what BB takes.
I think
I'm
he's
not
the
sure
judge.
if BB is.
Yeah,
Is BB the judge?
BB's
Really?
the judge and Roland is her lawyer.
Is that actually mentioned? I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, that's the two. They play the two specific characters. They mention that at the end. That's the
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
How the
so
fuck
the
did I
whole
miss
thing is
that?
being run by AI.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I think they do
both
mention that it's
Roland and
being.
BB would eventually
Yeah,
come to the same fate as Iona.
Because he's
I
6
think
at
they
the
mention
time.
that it's being observed at the time. As the case is happening, experts are observing it, which I assume in theory could be the onlookers in the court. The equivalent of a here, stick an Oculus Rift on your head, and we're all going to watch this.
Well, the testimony
Yeah, well, I'm-
stands. I mean, like, it is a real
Yeah.
testimony. Like, they can use it later on in future cases if this were to ever return.
Which I feel like the whole purpose of this book is setting up the future for if Cortana reappears, is she a person? I feel like that's kind of the whole point.
Yeah, well, Cortana is mentioned a few times throughout the book as kind of like everything that went on with Cortana is kind of prompted him to really take every AI related issue super seriously. That like obviously there's a lot of focus on AI right now because they've essentially lost Cortana. We don't know where she is, what condition he is.
I was kind of curious about that. What exactly is the issue that they have with Cortana? Like, as far as they're
I say it's the fact that it's a rampant AI out there in the wild that they don't control.
Well, as far as they're concerned, at this stage, she's dead. Like, this takes place after the events of Halo 4, so I was kind of curious,
Yeah, but I'm guessing that they're officially she's not dead. I'd say they just don't know. They're assuming this, I mean, we have another AI, potentially Serena, out there, potentially going mad. Do you know what I mean? So there is, I mean, we don't know yet.
There's something about the way they word it and the Cortana issue, and I was just trying to figure out, is there something else we don't really know about? Was it?
Well, at the
issue might have been just her general manufacture, who she was, the way she was made, how she went about, the fact that she was literally, impervious to all other AI restrictions. She took a lot of things upon herself to do and just did them behind people's back. Do you know what I mean? She had her own sense of morality of what was right and wrong, and she could justify what she was doing to herself.
AI. Baby's kind of the same. He does more than a few things like that.
He's kind of the same, but it's they always compare themselves to her in terms of like she is like, how is she described in this book? There's like very specific language of like
little monster or something.
Perfect little monster, like her spectacular genius, monstrosity or whatever. Like Cortana is definitely, I would say, the most powerful of the AIs out there. I mean, she's
definitely.
She has. I mean, it's even like.
I mean, her brain. She was cloned by
Dr. Halsey,
the smartest people that existed at the time.
But she came from living flesh, which was the big kind of unique thing about her, that it was a clone, obviously living brain that supplied her matrix, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But
so I suppose
it is crazy
to steer this back into the book because we keep roaming off topic.
We do. There's so many AIs.
They start the court case, and we'll call him by his real name, Roland. Then basically asks her a few sort of setup questions about, does she feel superior to humans? How does she feel? And she kind of says, in a lot of ways, emotionally, philosophically and all that, I'm not, I'm just faster and better equipped.
Yeah, efficiency wise, but she says like it's not better. Do you know what I mean? It's just kind of
better's a kind of peculiar description for it, but
yeah, she's not trying to come across as all as like a superior kind of complex above.
And that's during that sort of conversation where she talks about how she has these human attributes, but they're a part of her she can switch off and ignore should she need to.
But she's still human. Do you know what I mean? She still has that baseline code of this is who she is.
As she uses the pun, it's built into her DNA.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Cause she comes from DNA, do you know what I mean? So there's a part of that in terms of, which is where we're going to get into this kind of, I would say the highlight of this book is kind of that human element that comes from her.
Yes.
Essentially allows her to dream.
Yeah,
which is
that dream sequence.
That dream sequence is just masterful. Like, I mean, I think it's the highlight of the story for me in terms of kind of how it's described, the language and the words used is just, it's marvelous. Like, it's just truly marvelous. It's something I would visually love to see.
That's why I think a graphic novel would be something great.
It's something that you have to read through a couple times to really visualize, though.
Yeah,
There's
I mean,
it's so much going on in it that it's really hard to understand
the language
what's
and kind of
the first time through.
The setup of how he makes it out and how like the crowd reacts. You've kind of ruined it for me now because telling me that there is no crowd, that it was all in VR. Because I never copped that at all. I didn't think that, but that's only because when I was reading it a second time,
you would think that the crowd would still have.
Everyone has access to this; they can all watch it, but
emotional algorithms.
It is still a thing that happened. They do kind of mention that any of the experts can, review this footage and review the testimony. So it's there. It's a thing. It's recorded. It's just. Which actually, the thing I liked about it was the fact that AI's dream. It's something we've never really heard mention of before now.
Well, one thing I found really interesting about the dream sequence is the fact that Iona saw a woman in this dream.
Oh, well, I suppose we should get into
Yeah.
the whole.
Well, I have actually here in front of me because I highlighted it. I read it on my Kindle, so I have some of the sections of the dream highlighted because the language is wonderful. So I'm actually going to read a little bit of it out, just kind of so you can get a sense of kind of what he's trying to describe and how he does it. So it kind of essentially has Iona walking as herself, first person view. Everyone can kind of see, and she's in like a town, and it's kind of blurry, but some of it's super detailed. And I'll read the direct quote now. In the dream, intelligence is gravity's victory over entropy, a war fought at the smallest scales at the greatest distance. In the dream, it's apparent that intelligence will find a way to defeat entropy, to defeat time, the universe knowing and saving itself in the dream. That is the meaning of life. She just fucking drops this bomb in this room, in this virtual room or whatever this space, which is just ridiculous. You know what I mean? That's just so deep. Like, you mean in terms of that, this is what an AI comes up with. Like, this is just uncontrolled to her subconscious, as it is for an AI or as it exists, came up with this by itself. And she describes it as it's the same process as human dreaming, whereby it's the mind repairing itself, assessing information, indexing it or whatever, storing
and essentially
it,
taking care of the process that will eventually cause our rampancy. You know, it's cataloging
exactly,
the information and reordering
from this stems her death. Like, I mean,
yeah.
It's very kind of interesting that she all of it seems to be related in her work. So you go back to this, like, here at this junction in the dream, I feel an affinity with gravity. We call it a weak force, but it's a misnomer. There is nothing weak about it. Certainly we will eventually be defeated by expansion and other stronger forces in the universe, but gravity is where intelligence comes from. So it's just mad. Like, it's just like to read this, like, it's just so beautiful to read it, and just like I can kind of understand it. Like, I understand the words and the language.
It's just getting that mental image for it.
I've never seen them in that order and placed that way.
They
and
go,
just to hear, like, I'm sure Frank did crazy kind of research to kind of like get this down, because it sounds legit. Like, it sounds as I would believe someone in real life describing this to me. Like, do you know what I mean? Trying to kind of dumb it down for me to understand what they're feeling and how they kind of felt, because obviously this is like the center point of building the case behind I'm a human, not a human, but a person. Do you know what I mean? That I am an existence.
She's an intelligence. She's an
intelligent being.
She deserves
an intelligent being.
She's alive. Yeah.
Yeah, she has consciousness and she is alive.
When they go into this dream, you know, they mention she's in this human city. She's moving through it, and eventually, as she goes through all these various things, she eventually takes flight.
Yeah.
Which leads on to something Chris was about to mention, an awesome little detail which honestly I never thought about at the time until he brought it up to me.
Well, there's a woman's face in the dream, and it could be a reference to the librarian who came in a similar way to humans in the Forerunner trilogy.
Yeah, she mentions this woman. She said,
I never clicked
She says, I don't recognize her, but I feel like it's important and it's familiar.
Yeah, because in the entire Forerunner trilogy, when you're dealing with ancient humans, they revered the librarian as some sort of goddess that comes to them when they're being born and kind of lays everything out for them and gives them life, kind of. Which is just the Gios, the Forerunner Gios. But
yeah, and she's kind of...
So that means AIs could have Gioses.
Well, that's kind of interesting, because maybe she's picking up on that from her creation, how she was created, like that was implanted in every human.
Or the person she came from, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's where she's getting this from.
Possibly. That's a very specific detail to have it as a woman instead of just as a being.
Well, I think everyone, even the ancient humans in the Forerunner world, they knew it was a woman. They knew it was the librarian, but she has that sort of shape, you know, and look about her. I think there's a name for it. It's an actual phenomenon in humans, because all children, even though they can't focus, essentially
try and make faces.
They remember the blurry face and sort of image of their mothers.
There is a term for that as to why humans always look at things and can make faces out of them. I think it is part of our, obviously, genetic code, consciousness structure of kind of a way of identifying other people, because obviously we're very social creatures, and that's kind of where we come from in terms of being able to recognize family human's mother. Do you know what I mean? And know
Yeah.
what's going on. That's how we put the world in context. But I guess that's essentially the story goes on from them in terms of like she obviously blows everyone's mind in the courtroom.
They're
This dream
projecting this
sequence.
image up on the roof of the courtroom as it's
Yeah, with
happening.
it sounds like it has
Yeah.
like Oculus Rift kit number 32 up there. Like
That would have been
Well,
amazing to
It's-
see.
It sounds more like, you know, that sort of the Microsoft like tech demo they did for the
HoloLens?
Kinect strapped onto a projector that kind of
The
turns your
HoloLens
living
thing?
room into something.
the
Do you know-
HoloLens.
No, do you not remember they did it a couple of years ago? It's
Oh,
basically
the
there's a projector facing your TV and a Kinect.
it's something room.
Yes, a
something
Lumi room. That's the.
Oh, Luma Room. Yeah.
And then it turns
Uh,
your
It
whole
kind of
wall.
seems like holograms to me or something. Like
Yeah,
It's kind
essentially.
of like
There's simply like the
Have you guys
whole.
ever played on a 3DS?
Yes.
that. Yes, I turned the 3D
Okay.
off because I'm a horrible person.
Well, the 3D how it works is it's like you're looking through a window instead of it popping out at you, so it could be something similar to that.
Yeah, but the way they kind of describes it that the whole screen has got the whole room has got screens around it. That it has like the whole room dims, the lights go down, and you get kind of everyone is treated to this kind of visual and oral experience
Which
in like
also-
3 dimensions.
Nice touch, by the way. I like that room is the Houses of Parliament in London.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it definitely London?
It is. It's the Houses of Parliament. I think they specifically mention, you know, it was rebuilt after an act of domestic terrorism in the 22nd century.
In the 22nd century.
It was blown up and then rebuilt for the United Earth Government's formation.
I remember them saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. That's 100% correct.
So
Nice one.
it's an interesting little touch because I like that the two books for Halo that Frank has written, one takes place in London and the other one takes place on a ship named after a football team.
What was the ship called?
Heart of Midlothian is a football team.
Is it?
I wondered for a long time and I saw Match of the Day, which for Americans is, what's the American football equivalent of Match of the Day?
Crap, I don't know.
You're talking about soccer, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a
It's
summary of
basically a
like all the
soccer show,
matches
but
that went on. And they
They
discussed
mentioned the
them
club's
at
name one day and I was like, oh, that's a warship in Halo. Wait a minute, what? Because
What's Halo doing in real life?
I don't follow
Is that right?
football, so I don't really know the two, but
That's weird. I never knew that.
there you go.
Well done, Frank. Just slips it in there. I hope nobody noticed. I'd say most people didn't. Unless obviously you were English.
I think they're called Hearts normally, that's why they never...
Oh, Hearts? Oh,
Yes,
right,
they
okay, I
don't-
know Hearts.
That's the full name.
Oh,
Yeah, that's
interesting.
Hearts.
They're a Scottish team, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yep.
In the Scottish Premier League. You know that, Chris. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Alright,
Here's our
very good.
token Scotsman.
Yeah, that's correct. There's definitely a team called Hearts or Heart of Midlothian.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I assume Frank might be a fan of then.
Yeah, he
It was
must
his
be.
Or
favorite.
maybe he just liked the name.
It's a kind of cool name for a ship, I'll give you that much. Heart of Midlothian.
I do forget he's Scottish, you see.
You can never forget that Frankie's Scottish.
I do forget now.
Never
I
forget.
used to remember every so often I'd watch maybe a video and they were doing an interview with him back in... It could have been the Bungie days, and he's sitting at his desk and there's a can of Tennent's behind him on the shelf, which is cheap, classy Scottish beer, if anyone was wondering. And it's just like, oh, I know that beer, that's classy. He's like, we should get a bottle of Buckfast to go with it.
Oh, that's disgusting. I
Another
highly doubt he was
reference that
drinking
Americans
Tennent's.
won't know.
Americans know what Buckfest is. Some do. Oren was asking me about Buckfest before. Why are we talking about Buckfest on a Halo Book Club podcast?
Scottish.
This
We're being
is
racist.
bad. We're being racist. We are a fairly racist
If
podcast.
he was
as
Irish,
things
we'd
go.
talk about Guinness, so, you know.
Nom nom.
Oh,
nom,
wow.
Delicious Guinness. Guinness is in a different fucking universe than Tennent's and fucking Buckfast. Okay, you kind of compare the two. One is the nectar of the gods, and the other one is just piss water, bottled.
If you
and
have any
sold to
complaints
people.
about feedback, please email or tweet David directly. Send your abuse
This
to
is
him.
a Halo podcast.
Even Krista likes Guinness. Yeah, sorry, Halo podcast. So, after she blows everyone's mind with her dream sequence, it moves into the kind of closing sectors where essentially the judge, now confirmed as BB, I didn't fucking know that, but BB, essentially grants her a kind of stay of execution where she can go into stasis until they can review the case on a
Yes.
later date. So this is obviously lies slash kind of truth, where essentially she agrees to this. She feels relieved and happy, and she feels like she's won something. Like that she's not going to be killed. She realized after she got this announcement, this verdict, that's the word I'm looking for, that how relieved she was, how afraid she was of dying. So what happens is essentially the team that went down for maintenance that we discussed earlier have been slowly partitioning her and shutting parts of her functionality down without her knowing. So the way kind of Baby described it is that they've reduced her down to the bare essentials of her personality, that she doesn't have access to the wealth of knowledge that she normally would, that essentially she thinks she is whole because the part they left behind is whole.
They kind of trapped her in her subconscious, you know.
That's kind of what it sounded like.
Yeah,
I mean,
they've trapped her in her dream state, and she doesn't know any different.
Exactly, but they can kind of monitor, and they can still see into what she's doing, which is like really, really weird. So they're kind of
she's like in limbo, basically.
Yeah, that's the way that they've described it. That like, I don't know if it's the technical term is dead. Like, I don't know if she can be revived from this state.
I got the feeling that it was permanent.
I got the feeling that they could. No?
No, I kind of got the feeling this was permanent. They'd cut off, they kind of removed her higher functions for analysis. And that,
so it's like she got a lobotomy.
She got a lobotomy, and she just lives in her subconscious now, and she doesn't know any different because she doesn't realize anything's missing.
That's kind of horrible. Do you know what I mean? And in terms of like, I wasn't sure if it was permanent or not, or if it was just a stasis, a kind of way of keeping her alive per se, without her overly learning anything new or thinking any more.
I thought it was a way to keep her alive, but keep her from being rampant. So eventually they could revive her when a verdict or something came by.
Well, you see, that's what I mean. Because she was never getting a verdict. That's what makes me think this wasn't the stasis that they talked about in the court. You know,
but they kind of alluded to the fact that maybe one day this could be brought into the real world and to the public.
But they they seem to be referencing it as going forward. This might help the next AI, but it's not going to help her. You know, I got the feeling when
it won't help her case, but I don't know. To be honest, it's more so like I don't want it to be the case where like that she's completely cut off or lobotomized, and that's kind of it.
I kind of got the feeling that was it, and you know the way they were talking, you know, Baby and Roland, it was kind of, I got the feeling this might help us someday, or AI's further along, but you know.
Yeah, but they were talking about did we lie to her, and he said not really. Do you know what I mean? That like she got kind of what she wanted, that she isn't an element of stasis, that she isn't dead.
Well, I suppose what she wanted was her case. They gave her case, and then they gave her a happy ending, but.
Was Iona really trying to preserve herself, or was she trying to just get the ball rolling when it comes to AI and humanity and having rights and stuff like that?
I believe it was just to get the ball rolling.
Both.
Yeah, because she commented on herself that she said, fair enough if this is just me passing the baton to the next individual trying again. Do you know what I mean? They're just helping them build the case up. To obviously
So best case possible, she gets her freedom, but worst case, she starts a movement against killing AIs after 7 years.
Yeah, creates an awareness around it. But then, what I was kind of thinking is, they've obviously, I mean, what does she think would happen if she gets her freedom? They grant her all her rights, everything is perfect. She's still going to go rampant. So, what does she think will happen next? I mean, what was she actually? What was in her brain her actual goal? Because
they would have to find a cure for rampancy for AIs to keep going.
I suppose it might be that, or it might be just the case of she wanted to grow old and essentially die of natural causes, you know.
She wanted to go rampant? Because watching Cortana...
This is like the AI equivalent of Logan's Run, you know. You get your few years on Earth and then we kill you before you get too old.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. But, I mean, you're saying they die old of natural causes, that was she wanted. But we watched Cortana do that. And it was horrible.
But I mean, eventually Cortana would have... Well, I mean, talking about AIs, once they start going rampant, it's like a downward spiral. It's like having a terminal disease.
It's just
like
people, you know,
crazy.
slowly
so
going...
eventually an AI will die out just from rampancy.
Eventually an AI
will die out. There is the chance of metastability.
Well, true,
now, Chris, you better talk about that now.
Well, metastability is when an AI gets over the will leap, that is rampancy and all that. So if they get over that, they can live theoretically forever.
Where did you hear this? Where did this come from?
Who
Well,
mentions it?
I can't remember where it's mentioned. I just remember that's a thing.
Is it in the Fall of Reach when Cortana's talking about it? Isn't it?
I don't know.
I think is it during the section when they discuss Halsey's plan to try and get Cortana access to slip space? You know, I think they kind of mentioned that one other option to rampancy would be Halsey's thing of unlimited data storage in slip space, and the other is metastability, where you kind of you
that sounds
level
familiar.
out.
Yeah, this hasn't been the cure for rampancy hasn't been like directly talked about in the Halo
I suppose
universe.
in
It's only
theory
been like hinted at.
there is no cure for rampancy because even the Forerunners never knew it because their AIs are all slowly going unstable.
343 guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're doing a lot better than 7 years.
Well, I say
You know
with
what
the
I mean? They're doing
Forerunner
billions of
technology, they
years.
go longer. But although I think,
Medic and
Does it-
Bias went back from being rampant to being.
well, he was
He was
corrupted. He wasn't
destroyed, though,
rampant,
wasn't he?
But,
Oh, that's
um,
true.
He was destroyed and basically rebuilt. So
But
it's
the thing they
almost like
kind
he
of
gotta
mention
start
is,
over, right?
that the Forerunners AI had access to the domain, and I kind of got the feeling when they could upload their stuff there, they didn't go rampant.
Does
You think-
Domain use slip space data storage?
We've no
That's
idea.
never
I'd
been
say.
really talked about.
Oh wait,
It's
that was something mentioned in Halsey's journal, but then the pages were ripped out. So
Yeah, it's kind
Yeah.
of a
Well, I think you could say, Chris, that they were, because obviously when all the slip space disruptions in the Forerunner books occurred,
When the
like-
Halos are moving and
yes.
stuff
Yeah,
then
like
you
that.
didn't
they
have
actually-
access to the domain.
The domain,
they cut
yeah.
themselves off from the domain. So you think that obviously slip space and the domain do have a relationship there, even if
Which
we're not
that
sure what
always
it
made
is.
me wonder. Then was that what Halsey was essentially trying to figure out? Because they talk about in Halo 4 how everything the librarian did would eventually direct humanity in the right way, and if they were going to pick up the mantle from the Forerunners, one of the things they needed was access to the domain.
Which
Though
essentially
I
we
thought the
believe
domain
they have
was
now.
destroyed along with
True,
with the firing of the Halo
But
rings.
the librarian didn't. Well, it might.
I
be
don't see
because we
how
don't know
the
if they-
destruction
it
of organic
was-
life would wipe out the domain.
It was
But
built
it-
from precursor technology, which was vulnerable
Yeah,
to
which
the
was-
Halos.
Well, the precursor technology was basically like it was like a neural thing, right? Kind of like something to do with like brain connections and stuff like that. So it's electricity, but it's still organic.
Yeah, and so at the very end of the last book, spoilers for the end of the Forerunner trilogy, as
Super
the
spoilers.
librarian sits on Earth after burying the portal generator, the flood confront her, and the Gravemind talks to her through the flood spores that are there, and basically breaks it to her that when they fire the Halos, the domain will be destroyed, and then
Okay,
that's
Something
why.
they've never thought about.
Yes,
it.
and
she's
that's
like,
why the
"Oh,
Didact
shit."
went insane on Requiem, because he was essentially locked in a ball with no access
Of
to the domain,
silence.
which was eventually going to cure him.
Well, I would straight up say and not believe anything the fucking Gravemind says to anybody, because he was obviously just trying to save his own skin.
Well, I don't know if it was, because he basically said, when he talks to her, he says to her, the domain was our creation, you might have used it, but we built it.
Well, and also the ball had already been rolling at that point. There was nothing. If the Gravemind wanted to preserve himself, you think he would bring up the fact that
Well,
the Halo rings would kill the domain.
The Gravemind
earlier.
did preserve himself because he still exists in the Flood, because he's the same,
Well, that's true.
he's the same Gravemind we spoke to in 2 and 3.
but that's like the Forerunner's fault for keeping specimens of them around.
Yeah, but that's it.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing?
But I mean, there could still be flood in that very outer rim of the universe. We don't know. We don't
Oh.
know. that
That's
there
why
isn't
they were
flood out there.
preserved in the first place.
Yes, to still be studied in case they returned once again.
And then we
Yeah.
returned them. So kind of swooping us all back into the book, because we're getting way off topic and
Oh,
we're
yes.
going way over on time. But the book obviously ends with Iona being put in this trapped, lobotomized state. That's kind of where it ends, with BB and Roland talking to each other through it. And it kind of has this nice little image of Cortana seeing this, having her dream again, and becoming kind
Cortana?
of one, Cortana, becoming one with this
Iona.
lovely lady person who she sees in her dream, Iona. So I guess we've talked about through the stories, talked about loads of this and stuff, so I guess I can kind of say for everyone, we all love this
Closing
book.
thoughts?
We all love this book.
Yeah,
yes,
it's an
we all love
amazing
it. It's
book.
awesome.
This book gets a 10
So-
out of 10
I would
for
like
me.
one thing to add in. What I like what 343 is doing with all their books now is that they're getting characters that have already existed in the Halo universe.
Yeah.
'Cause it would have been really easy for Frank to just create a new AI, but instead he pulled from older lore.
Yeah, my suspicion at the time when they announced it was, oh, is this Roland or someone, you know? But I think, like I said in a show months ago, you know, they're doing a really good job of taking all the Bungie stuff and stitching it back into their own stuff now, that it doesn't feel like two separate universes, you know.
Yeah.
Here's your old characters, we've given them new life, we've done something else with them, and it all kind of meshes together.
And I mean, Bungie never really connected the dots between their novels and their games, which is what 343 is doing now, slowly integrating the two.
But they're doing a wonderful job. You've got so much more media to do it all with. So, Chris, you've been very quiet over there, Chris. Tell us what you think about this book. Your favourite parts, everything about it.
Well, I
What do you got, Chris?
really like the dream sequence. That's got to be my favourite part of the book. Just because so much imagery. It's just a brilliant part of the book.
It's very
is.
profound.
It is. It, like, the language involved is fantastic. I mean, just how he can truly, Frank does a fantastic job of getting those words into your brain and giving you a...
He made me
Yeah.
feel kind of, I'll have to say, he did make me feel a little bit thick, because I kind of read it and went, those are words I don't know, excuse me a minute, till I figure these out in the right order and work out what's going on in my head. And that was actually, that made me find out something, because I went to download the audiobook, because I find when I have a lot of trouble like that, it was the same with the Forerunner books. I got the audiobooks to figure out names and a few different things, and then the audiobook's not available here.
Oh, at all?
It's only available in the US.
Feckin' US. They get everything.
So hopefully it comes out here soon. If anyone's listening to this that might work at 343 that could ask questions, you know.
That would be nice.
Maybe.
Just get Frank to read the book to us. That'd be okay. I'd be okay with that.
I could
too.
listen to Frank
Let's
read
just
the
get him on
audiobook.
Skype.
Yeah,
Just read
it wouldn't take very long.
It's I
you
think
know.
it's an hour and 20 minutes on the American version of Audible.
Oh, that's okay.
And
That's,
it's only
that sounds about right.
it's only like $2. I was gonna be
Oh,
quite happy to just buy it and listen to it.
maybe there's another way you can get it. I'm not sure. So, Aaron, tell us about the book. We kind of know your general thoughts about it, but
Yeah.
let us know anyway. Closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts.
Closing thoughts.
My closing thoughts are, what is it setting up? Because everything lately in the lore has a goal. So I'm kind of wondering, is this the eventual setup to Cortana being a person? Is Frank laying the groundwork now for her, you know, her eventual return, and at some point being declared a being of her own?
Yeah. Yes. Move on.
Perhaps.
Like
Correct.
that seems like the goal of it.
A+.
You know?
I thought the same thing. I thought that this book, I mean, I don't know, it's probably just bias because I love Cortana so much, but I feel like anything to do with AI, I think filters into her in some way or another, that she is this kind of overlord in terms of kind of like her place in the Halo canon, Halo universe as being the AI.
Well-
and yes, she's gone, and they've all these other characters and personalities and essentially people coming through.
Suppose, to make a weird sort of analogy, she's the AI equivalent of a Spartan. The other AIs are regular people, and she's the better than them version. In the same way that, you know,
Basically.
John is the enhanced version of a human, Cortana's the advanced version of
That's a perfect
an AI.
perfect contrast. That's a perfect way to think about it in terms of, like, you know, she is so much more because of how she was made, but also we can't underestimate the fact that I think it's First Strike, it could be even the Flood, when she interacts with Forerunner technology for the first time and she downloads from the Halo array this gigantic amount of information that almost
the
crushes her. That almost crushes her
When
in
she's
terms
in
of, like,
the
Grave-
Halo ring.
And the Gravemind
Yeah.
as well, that almost crushes her as well.
and in Halo 2 when she's left behind, she goes in Halo 3, she obviously goes through a massive psychological trauma of the interrogation. And there's a short story, actually, do you know the one, it's just called Cortana in Halo
Human
Evolution?
Weakness, I believe.
Yeah, is that what it's
Human
called?
weakness, yeah.
And it's just essentially a book about Cortana being tortured by the Gravemind. And
But
it's
really,
so
really
dark.
interesting, and gives you a really good insight of what the Gravemind can do, though.
Yeah, it's like how an organic mind integrates with an artificial intelligence and how it corrupts it.
Yeah, because they can't. I think they mention that in the Forerunner books. You know, the one thing the Gravemind can't do is take over an AI. He has to persuade them to join him,
Yeah.
which is what he did with Mendiga Bias.
Which is exactly what I want to know, is like, how is that possible? How is that done? And
Well-
this little short story in this book gave me so much insight in terms of how that was possible.
Yeah.
Because in the Forerunner books, it's kind of vague enough of
Yeah,
he
they
corrupts
just
them.
kind of say, you know, Mendiga Bias was basically locked in a room with him for a few years, and he just basically talked him into turning on the Forerunners.
Well,
Yeah.
Medicaid Bias was supposed to be interrogating Gravemind. It was like 50 years
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
interrogating him.
There we go.
43.
I think it's
Showing off
43.
Chris.
I think
Which
it's
is kind
43.
of, yeah, which is nothing to the Forerunners, really.
No, not at all.
And I mean, like,
So-
I kind of wonder, actually, he was the best of the best of what the Forerunners had to offer, and makes Cortana look like an Android phone. So how did he manage to corrupt Mendigan Bias in that time and not turn Cortana?
I would say, based on the fact that what he has backing, what she has on her side is her humanity, in terms of everything she is, and her will, and just her strong belief that John was coming back for her. Do you know what I mean? That she believed that she wasn't being left behind, that she believed she had something else to believe in. And
Well, thinking about it, the Forerunner AIs didn't really have any humanity. They were just AIs.
yeah,
And they never
well,
really do explain where. Well, I suppose they explain where some of them come from, because we know where Guilty Spark came from. And he was a human.
yeah, that's true.
But they don't explain where the Contender class AIs come from. Not that I think there's only 2 of them, isn't there, Chris? There's
It's
only
offensive.
Well,
bias
there's-
and
Yeah.
defensive bias.
There's actually meant to be
Offensive
quite a
American.
few of them, but we only know of 2, maybe 3.
yeah, and they're the top end of the, you know,
Yeah.
You'd imagine they're the military grade AI
Well, they're-
or whatever. They're the
they're
hard.
kind of like the super military, you know.
Yeah. Because it
Like-
wasn't Medican, I'm getting off topic again, but he was designed specifically to fight the Flood. That was his purpose?
Yes,
No, Medicant Bias
Mendigan.
was a. I thought Medicant Bias was just a. He was just supposed to be a super AI. While Offensive Bias was made to fight
No,
Medicant Bias
yeah,
and the Flood.
I thought Mendigan Bias was designed to fight the Flood, and then Offensive
Offensive
Bias
Bias
was
meant to
designed
fight
to
him.
fight Mendigan Bias to stop him.
Yeah, that's the way I remember, but I need to read those books again. I only read them the once, and they're super deep. So, guys, I'm kind of going to maybe wrap it up, because the call says we're almost an hour, so I'd say we've been talking a lot. We got a lot out of this small book. I say thank you very much for Aaron and Krista. They did a great job on the script and getting everything together for this show. Thanks for
Yay.
Krista for surviving a hurricane and podcasting
Yay.
from the middle. That's awesome.
Oh, guys, it was the worst hurricane ever. One of my friends took a picture of like a chair that'd been knocked over, and he's like, Hurricane Erica, never forget.
You're so hardcore, MLG, Krista.
So I take it this is just
Goddamn.
like a light summer storm, then, is it?
The hurricane broke up into a tropical depression or tropical storm, then a tropical depression, and now it's just a regular rainfall.
So
Excellent.
Could cause
it's
flooding.
Irish
It's not
summertime.
a hurricane.
Yeah, stay safe. Don't die.
basically.
So we're just going to hear
I'll try
rain
not to.
throughout the whole podcast now.
Yeah, it's nice though. It's nice and relaxing.
Rainy
It'll
day.
if we can layer in some ODST music underneath it, it'll feel perfectly
Oh,
at home.
some nice slow jazz. That'd be nice. Thanks, Krista. So,
You're welcome.
does anyone want to say
Sorry.
anything else? I mean, we've kind of covered the main synopsis of the book, the story, what happened, the characters, the plot. I don't think we really missed anything. But if you can think of anything you'd like to say or add at the end of the show, guys.
I like cupcakes.
Krista likes cupcakes. Chris,
It's a brilliant book. Get it now if
It
you
is.
haven't already.
it is a brilliant book.
Yeah, buy it,
Aaron?
go make a coffee, read it, enjoy it, finish your coffee, go home. It's
Yes,
good.
I would highly recommend this book. It's a fantastic read. The dream sequence alone is worth it. I imagine you're listening to this because you read it. It'd be very
Hopefully
weird
you
if you
have.
didn't. Hopefully you have, because this is spoiler alert at the end of the show for all the shit we just talked about.
Which is kind of
it's-
half the reason we put them on their own now, so that you don't have to worry about getting
Exactly.
spoiled at the end of an episode.
I imagine that this isn't not a must read for Halo 5. So I'll say that again. Like, you don't this won't be like, I doubt anything in this will come into Halo
No,
5's story or
I don't
plot.
think this was on the list. I think it's just New Blood and
Yeah, and Last Light, I think.
Last Light.
Well,
Yeah, I don't even think
yeah.
Hunters in the Dark was on that list, was it, Chris?
I didn't see it either, no. I
Hunters
think
in
that
the
only
Dark
just-
has the little importance of introducing a character, I believe.
Yeah, just the
Oh,
Veil
true. Yeah, I
reference.
suppose
I think
that's probably
like,
it.
I honestly don't. Oh no, I'm not going to say that. It's fine. So read this book because it is worth reading and it's fantastic. But don't be like expecting anything in this to influence the effects of Halo 5, because I'd say it won't. Purely based on the characters and the people involved. Having said that, that's our kind of closing thoughts. Thanks everybody for listening, and you know us all by now. We're Halo Podcast Evolved. We have a wonderful Facebook group full of great, fantastic people.
Yes, come and join us as we wait for the... God, this will really date this podcast. We're waiting for the trailer reveal, which they've been teasing us with since last night.
Guys, it's August 31st.
Is there still
31st,
nothing?
And it's about 4:33
Wait, look, wait,
PM
okay, hang on.
Eastern.
I'll do a live update while we're here, and I'll
Do
check the
a
group.
live update for everybody, because I'm going to put the show out tonight anyway. So.
Everyone hold on. And then when you listen back to this in about 3 years' time, you're going to have no clue what's going on.
No,
you'd
you're
be
gonna
like,
be like, I
"Nailed
remember
it."
that trailer. That was the worst trailer ever.
I think-
Why are they so excited for it?
I think there's about 5 hours to go till it comes out now.
Yeah, no.
Why
still
are you saying
nothing.
5 hours? Is there a countdown?
No, it's just when they said 24 hours from a tweet. I'm just going
Oh,
forward from that.
sorry.
I suppose 8 p.m. would be 5 p.m. West Coast time, wouldn't it?
I don't know. I don't do times. You know that. You do all my times.
Wait, I've broke my brain.
You can do this.
No.
Live, Matt's live. You can do this.
If no, forget it. It'll come out at some point today.
Or
It looks like
tomorrow.
it's going to
Okay.
be awesome.
Yeah, or tomorrow for... Wait, you going to bed right now? Don't you dare.
I live
Oh,
in the UK.
maybe. Yeah, we live in the UK.
So do
what are
we.
you talking about?
We're young. You're younger
I say
than us.
UK,
You have
nobody-
no excuse.
I'm not confused. I don't live in the UK. Let me get that out there straight
You
away.
live just beside us. It's okay.
I live beside the UK. So, Krista is still here and alive, so that's nice. So,
Yay!
with that, everybody, we can all throw stuff. Fantastic Facebook group with people like Chris in there. Say hi, Chris.
Woo, woo, woo. Hey, guys.
Hi, Chris.
That's Chris. Meet people like Krista, who's sometimes there when she's alive. Say hi, Krista. There's Krista alive.
That's sad.
And we have
They
Aaron.
make me
Yes, I'm
post
usually
these
always
things.
lurking in the group somewhere, watching, waiting for my moment to strike.
Exactly. He's there, watching, waiting.
Black, 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 black.
So, I won't belabor the point, guys. I think that's it, and we're done. Evolved.
Evolved.
Evolve.
Evolved.